It,
No, just one of the archived ones.
yeah, but I think they're always like a couple weeks
They
behind.
heard the Jim Barnett show. So do you have his number? Or you want me to get it to you?
You did give it to me.
I still have it here. I think. I'm sure I do. Let's see here. Here we go. Yeah, it's 650.
Do you know how long he can stay with us?
2 segments.
Okay, good.
I think first segment talk baseball, second segment talk about his book. He wrote a couple of really interesting books about music. He's written some baseball books, but the one he wrote recently is about music. But also he had a really interesting interview because his dad worked with Frank Sinatra, so he spent a whole afternoon with Sinatra, and that was worth a chapter in the book. And I think it'd be kind of fun to hear him tell some stories about that because it's Sinatra's sort of a legendary figure, to say the least. Frankie was JFK's buddy until JFK cut him off because Robert Kennedy said, "This guy's getting into too much trouble. Setting up with too many women. He's associated with the mob. We don't want him around, you know." So JFK just he was too nice a guy to say, "I can't see anymore," so he just didn't return his calls. And Frankie finally found out through the grapevine that JFK was cutting him out, so then he got really pissed off and started supporting the Republicans.
Because of that?
Basically, because of that. Yeah, he was a good buddy of Nixon after that. I am not a crook. All right, so 650.
So on here?
339 0709.
Okay. Oops, you know what? I gave him my mic. There's something wrong.
Oh, yeah.
I'll give this mic a chance.
Give that mic a chance. It deserves a shot. You know what I got? It was funny. I really like mochas in the morning, so I was at the health food store yesterday, and one of my neighbors, she buys chocolate, hot chocolate, but it's like organic hot chocolate for her husband who really likes it. Because you should get this and put it in your coffee. So today I had it with the coffee. Oh my God, it's so good. Oh, loved it with a little bit of whipped cream.
Ooh.
Just
see, all you young guys can have that kind of stuff. Us old people can't do that anymore.
Yeah,
okay, number.
Okay, hang on a second.
650.
650. 339 0709. Hopefully he'll answer. Hopefully.
Your call has been forwarded to an automated voice
Is
message.
he at home? Because I have the other number.
Let's try the other number. Well, let's leave a message here too.
3
You know what I'll do? I'll text him also.
7 0 9 is not available. At the tone, please record your message. When you've finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Hey, Bruce, it is Edward Brown and Bruce McGowan, ready to record on our Sports Econ 101. I'm going to try your other phone number, and if you can hold off, we'll call you right back. Thanks. Bye. Did we call 339?
We did.
That's just,
Is that the only number you got?
Yeah.
I don't think he's at home.
No, I have a different number also.
Well, you do have.
728 number?
Yeah, that's his home phone. You can try that one.
Hi, you've reached Bruce, Martha, and Wally, 728-8536. Please leave a message after the beep. Thanks.
Hey, Bruce, it is Edward Brown and Bruce McGowan. We tried your mobile phone, and now you're home. And we're going to try you back on your mobile phone in just a bit. Hopefully you'll be there so we can record our segments on Sports Econ 101. Thank you. Bye.
All right, hopefully we'll hear back here. good or bad?
We just recorded our 300th show
Did you?
for the Best of Messing. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Been on
great.
6 years.
300. I might get a little part-time work at the game, possibly.
Which game?
The FM sports station.
Oh, 95
Just,
something.
yeah, just filling in once in a while.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
They'll pay you for that, won't they?
Oh yeah. It's just
Big bucks.
be good. Did you hear that KNBR was trying to? Their, the talent there. They all have contracts, so they get paid, whatever they can negotiate.
Yeah.
But all the board ops and the producers, they get paid like a minimum wage. So they've tried to organize and get into the AFTRA union. And there's Bruce. Hey, Bruce, what's happening?
Ask him which number.
Oh, that's okay. No problem. Should we just call you back on your cell? Because we got to call you from here. Should we just do that? 339-0709? You got it. We'll call you right back. Thanks.
So
Yeah, he said for some reason it wasn't going through, but he got my text.
So they're trying to organize the union?
Yeah, but the Cumulus is not having any of it, of course.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's not a surprise.
Your call has been forwarded to an automated voice.
You know, have him call this number then.
Okay.
So I don't know why it's not working.
That's weird. Okay. Have him call this
Oh,
number.
okay,
What's our...
415.
Okay, in a second, let me just give him a buzz. Okay, Bruce, and let me write that down here so I don't...
And there?
Yeah. Okay.
415.
Uh-huh.
451.
451.
6099. Extension 102.
Extension 102. $6099, right? 459-6099.
451.
Yeah. Hey, Bruce. It's calling you back here for some reason. We can't reach you. You get this message. Call us back at this number, and we'll get you on. 415-451-6099, and then hit extension 102. Okay. I'm going to text you also. That is weird. I wonder why he's not answering. But he called me back. Okay. Let me text him. So, where will we be without texting?
Yeah, really.
Be in trouble. I'm sorry. Hello, Bruce McGowan speaking. Oh, yeah, now you're on a different number, Bruce. Should we call you on this number? Yeah, I did, and I got voicemail, but I see a 777 number. Is that? Yeah, that's better anyway. Landline is better. Why don't, Edward, you want me to, here, I'm going to give you a different number. What, is Bruce at 777, what's the last four?
What's the first 650?
Oh, 415.
415.
Yeah, because he's in the city. 777, what's the last four digits, Bruce? 7115. And is that going to get you directly, or do we need to ask somebody to? Okay, we'll call you right back. Sorry about that. Okay. That's weird. He says he's not.
777
7115.
7115.
Yeah.
Okay, he's ready for it?
Yeah. It says it's weird. He's not getting my. He's getting my text, but he's not getting my. That's weird.
Yeah, that is true.
Sometimes these things happen.
Hello?
There he
is.
is.
Okay.
Hey,
Yeah,
Bruce,
that's strange.
what is the name of this new book also that you've come out with?
It's called Shop Around.
Shop Around, okay. And it's basically about music and your experiences with your dad, or is it about just your own experiences, with music, or what is it about particularly? Because I just
Well,
want
the subtitle is growing up with Motown in a Sinatra household. My dad worked a lot with all the great musicians of the day, and
sure.
but I grew up with Motown, which is not exactly what he wanted to hear.
Sure.
Yeah.
All of our dads were
Well,
like
let's do this. We'll talk a little baseball at first, and then we'll segue into that. How's that sound?
Yeah, I'd love to help you. I'd love to help you promote the book.
Yeah, no problem. So we're going to go ahead. We've got to record a little pre-segment here. It takes about a minute and a half, and then we'll get right to it. So we'll keep going.
Stay with us. Okay, here we
Yeah.
go. Welcome. You're listening to Sports Econ 101, the show where we discuss sports topics from a business perspective. I'm your host, Edward Brown, along with my co-host, Bruce McGowan, longtime sports radio personality. Today's show is going to be really special because of our guest. Who's our guest today?
Yeah, a good friend of ours, Bruce Jenkins, longtime Bay Area sports writer who is really, I think, one of the best baseball writers in America. And I'm saying that because I've been reading him for so long and enjoyed his work, but also he's going to talk about a book he's written about music as well. So it's going to be kind of a fun conversation about baseball and music today.
Well, especially because he's got the certain connections within the family.
Yes,
Okay.
very much so, yeah.
All right, each commercial break, we're going to ask a sports trivia question. We're going to be giving away vacations to the first email with the correct answer. Those vacations are not sponsored by the radio station, but by Lighthouse Resort and Marina, and those vacations are free. Their only request is a $100 cleaning fee to cover the housekeeping expenses. Check them out at lighthouseresortandmarina.com. Today's trivia theme, since we just had the Baseball All Star game, is Major League Baseball All Star games.
Sounds
Right?
good.
We'll have questions about that.
All right.
And also, I was reading a little article about minor leaguers filing a lawsuit alleging that their pay violates federal and state minimum wage laws.
Well, it depends on what level you're talking about.
Well, extra batting practice, traveling
Okay.
between games, and
Yeah.
we'll talk a little
All
bit.
right.
Where does it end?
Okay.
Okay, this segment of Sports Econ 101 is sponsored by Pacific Private Money, providing mortgage investments that are currently yielding 8% secured by real estate. It doesn't get any more conservative than that. You've got to check them out at Pacific Private Money. And by the way, Sports Econ 101 has a special going on. If you go to our Sports Econ 101 website and click on paintball, you'll get 85% off of paintball tickets all around the country. There's like many venues for that. So go to Sports Econ 101 and click on the paintball icon and see what packages we've got available for 85% off. So don't touch that dial. You're listening to Sports Econ 101. We'll be right back with our guest, Bruce Jenkins. All right, thank you. I'm just going to save this file, and then we'll get right into it.
What you writing on today, Bruce?
I just did a little piece for the Page 2 column about the NBA commissioner saying that the Warriors building a super team is bad for the league.
That's kind of disingenuous, considering the Lakers and the San Antonio and Miami were all in Chicago were all super teams.
Yeah, nobody seemed to have a big fluff when LeBron went to Miami.
Now, maybe this guy, maybe Adam Silver just wanted to have something to talk about. Who knows?
Yeah.
Jeez. What did you think of the All Star game the other night?
I like it okay. I mean, the whole premise of it counting for something is ridiculous because nobody takes it seriously. But I always like to watch the game.
Yeah, it's fun.
That's fun. All right, here we go. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. Bruce, we have another Bruce on the phone.
We do. We have Bruce Jenkins, who writes for the San Francisco Chronicle. Has been writing for them for well over 30 years, covering a lot of baseball, basketball. Was a beat writer for the A's for a long time. Writes a regular column. And Bruce, got to ask you a little bit about the All Star game. We talked about how this was a strange game played in a National League park with American League rules, and the winner, of course, now the winner of the American League pennant gets the home field advantage. Kind of a strange setup, but I guess they want the game to mean something, but it sounds like the players just want to have fun.
Well, it's probably the least important game you could possibly have, and it decides the most important game, if it comes down to Game 7, which is an unbelievably farcical premise. The whole idea that everybody's got a different agenda in this game. I mean, I heard from Pedro Gomez, who was on the scene for ESPN, that by the end of the game, more than half of the players on each team had left the building. They weren't there.
Really? They weren't even in the building?
They weren't even. They left the ballpark. So
Jeez.
I mean, and the managers are playing everybody under the sun, and the great players are getting only 2 at bats. Nobody treats the game as if it means a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do agree with the idea of playing under American League rules because, as a fan, who wants to see a pitcher hit?
Well, the only reason I think that you should not have a DH in the All Star game is because you would hit for the pitcher every time. He wouldn't hit. Therefore, you're able to bring a guy off the bench. He gets his appearance, he pinch hits, and then he's gone, and you can keep the regulars in there.
I guess that's one way of looking at it. Hey, as far as this year goes, this has been kind of an interesting year. I mean, there have been some surprises throughout baseball. Do you have any one particular story that is intriguing to you, perhaps more than any other, in terms of a team that has accomplished what a lot of people didn't think they were going to be able to do?
Well, having been in Cleveland for the NBA Finals and watching the Warriors series there, and really realizing what those fans have gone through over the years. It's their first professional major sports title since 1964. It's kind of cool to see the Indians making some noise.
That is a great story. And, of course, out here in the Bay Area, the Giants, with all the injuries they've had, have won 57 and 33 going into the second half. Does that surprise you at all? I mean, number one, number two on their rotation with Bumgarner and Cueto, both All-Stars. But you look at the lineup, and, it's been decimated with injuries, and yet they're winning all these close games.
Yeah, it's been surprising in light of the injuries. I thought from the beginning of spring training that they would win the division with the Dodgers finishing second. But the fact that they have more wins than the Cubs, going all this time without Pence and Panic and Duffy and having some rotation and bullpen issues is just remarkable.
One of the things also and we're talking with Bruce Jenkins of the Sandusky Chronicle, one of the things also that's kind of intriguing out here on the West Coast is that, the saga of the Oakland A's continues to be one, it's kind of a sad story. I mean, the commissioner, Rob Manfred, discussed it the other day, talked about the possibility of, where this team is maybe going to be and discussed the fact that he wants them to stay in Oakland, whereas Bud Selig in years past kind of ignored it and just said, well, it's up to the city of Oakland to figure out what to build, what kind of a facility to build for this team, or if the A's want to work with the city. How do you see this situation resolving itself? Is it just going to continue forever? Are they it's kind of like they're in purgatory.
Yeah, well, the Raiders have a lot to do with it, because both of those teams want new stadiums. They both kind of like to stay on the same lot they're on with a new facility, but the idea of building two parks there is not very feasible.
Yeah, because they don't want to share, do they?
No, absolutely not. I mean, they're sharing now, and it's a disaster. I mean, you can't build a new ballpark for multi-purpose. That went out in the 70s. I mean, if the A's build a park in Oakland, it's got to be baseball only. But the Raiders are making a lot of noise about going to Las Vegas, and Bruce, they don't want to be here. I mean, Mark Davis has made it clear they don't want to be here. So, in my opinion, just get out as soon as possible.
Let them leave. We don't want you anymore.
Well, for the first probably 4 games, they'd have to play away because it's too hot in Vegas.
Yeah. Well, they're talking about an indoor facility, aren't they?
I don't care where they go, but that would clear the way for the A's to build a ballpark, perhaps right on that same site, tear down the Coliseum and build a baseball park.
Yeah, it just hasn't been the same since the Raiders moved back here in '95. They had some good years. Generally speaking, they've been a poor team on the field, but the same kind of magic that we saw, and I got to cover a lot of those teams in the 1970s, it's just not the same, and I think that a lot of the old fans recognize that. Some of the new, it just seems like you go to a Raider game, Bruce, and tell me if I'm wrong, half the people are not even from the Bay Area. They fly up from L.A., they come up from wherever they are. It's almost like they have a cult following.
They fly in from Vegas.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I totally understand the romance of the Raiders, and I'm old enough to remember those great games of the 70s and great teams and great identity that the team had. And it's not that I'm especially wanting them to leave, except for the fact that they want to leave. So.
Yeah. It's interesting, though. I was a big fan of the Raiders during the 70s, and then when they left to go to L.A., it really kind of broke my heart. And then when they came back, I was kind of who cares?
Yeah, well, that is a heartbreaker. It's like, you break up with your girlfriend and you try to get it back, a few years later. It's really not going to work if it really wasn't working in the first place.
Yeah, I tried. My wife didn't like that too much. But
yeah, I ran into your wife, by the way, in a Sandusky.
Oh, that's right. She did. She said she saw you.
Yeah. It's a small town. That's one of the great things about living in the Bay Area, Bruce. We live in this enormous. It seems like it is one of the largest areas in the country in terms of population. But you run into people. If you live here all your life, you're constantly running into people you know. And that's one of the things I love about covering sports is even though a lot of the media folks come and go, we see people like yourself or Henry Schulman or John Miller at the ballpark, and that familiarity that you have with the people and just the whole atmosphere, I think kind of keeps us, those of us in the media, going back out there. I think that's half the enjoyment, is just seeing all the faces that you are familiar with.
Yeah, that's always been the case for me. I'm in my 43rd year at the Chronicle now. As you say, I've been writing for a little over 30 years, but that continuity is great, and we've lost some people. We've lost Dick O'Connor and Nick Peters and Ron Bergman, guys that I used to look up to and would tell me stuff about how it goes. But the players on the teams change a lot, but you see the same faces in the press box. The ones with longevity and been able to hold that job for all the best reasons are still around, and that's pretty gratifying.
Are the players today, you think, as accessible and as agreeable to sit down and tell stories as they were, say, 20, 30 years ago? Or maybe because you're older and because the players are more highly paid in their ritual. Their regimen is a little more organized. They're just not as available as they used to be. What's your reflection on that?
Yeah, I mean, way back when I started out, obviously there was no internet, no social media. The TV crews would come in just for quick spots, but I think when players really wanted to be heard, they were really willing to sit down with a newspaper writer, because that was the way it would get out to the public. Now there's really no need for any of them to do any interviews. Really, I mean, they can tweet out or in any form of social media what's on their mind at any length. And the television presence is a lot stronger, and they can, that way they're definitely not going to be misquoted. And the newspapers have definitely fallen by the wayside. I think it's regrettable, and it's certainly not going to get any better. I could see, in several years, the clubhouse access being even more restricted.
Well, of course, you have to do work also for the internet site for the San Francisco Chronicle, which means that you're going to get the younger, let's face it, a lot more young people are going on the internet. There are people our age that are doing it as well, but it seems like that's, something that you just have to do. The tweeting, the texting, all that kind of thing is part and parcel of your job today. Do you have any favorite players that you like to talk to today that are guys that maybe managers that you enjoy interacting with, Bruce, on a regular basis?
Well, in terms of managers, I've always enjoyed talking to both Bruce Bochy and Bob Melvin. One great thing about baseball that hasn't changed is that you can go into the clubhouse, and if they know you and they know that you've got some credibility, you can just sit there and just sort of BS around and talk off the record, crack a few jokes, and feel comfortable in there, which is so far from the case in the NFL, where they don't want you to know anything at all. Ideally, they suppress everything you knew.
Too much conspiracy theory.
State secrets, very
yes,
important.
Exactly. Okay, hey Bruce, stay with us. We're going to cut to our second commercial break, but first trivia question. You guys will know this, but don't answer until we come back. All right? Why did the 2002 All Star Game end in a tie? All right. That's our question. Email edward@sportsecon101.com the answer to that question, and the first email with the correct answer is going to win that free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Question again is, why did the 2002 All Star Game end in a tie? Right? Don't touch that dial. Sports Econ 101 will be right back.
All right, well, get into your book here coming up here, Bruce.
Okay.
How's the weather over in the city? It's hotter than Hades over here.
That's beautiful, but it's a little more crisp, as you might imagine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I went surfing the last few days over at Rodeo Beach, and it was just absolutely beautiful. I couldn't believe it. Even with the wind and the junky surf, there were some nice waves to be had. So have you been out in the water at all lately?
It's kind of hit and miss. There are a couple of good south swells rolled in recently that I got a little taste of. I've been kind of busy, but always getting out there.
Now, where do you like to go to Montana mostly, right?
Ocean Beach. In the summer, though, Ocean Beach is generally pretty junky. Yeah, more Montana and Kelly State Beach here in Half Moon Bay during the summer.
Nice. Are you a surfer or
body surfer?
He's like me.
Just like you.
Two Bruces that body surf that cover sports. How about that? How many of us are there, Bruce?
Not too many.
We're an exclusive club of two.
Well, and do you do that? Do you do the hand ski like?
I don't.
No, I never liked that. I go back too far.
It feels weird when you first try it, but once you get used to it, it just feels normal.
I'm gonna try it. Maybe we're going to Hawaii for Christmas.
Give it a shot. I got a couple extras. I'll give you one.
Really? Yeah. I'm gonna try it.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Here we go.
Let's get right into it again. Here we go. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Again, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. Here was our first trivia question about the Major League All Star Game, baseball, of course. Why did the 2002 All Star Game end in a tie?
And we'll let Bruce answer that one. Why did that happen, Bruce?
They ran out of players.
They ran out of pitchers, yeah.
You remember the great photo? I think it was of Bud Selig sort of throwing his hands up in the air going, well, there's nothing much more we can do.
You know, the flip side of that is when they had the All-Star Game at Candlestick Park in 1961. It went into the 10th inning, and the National League won the game, and the players responsible for it were Willie Mays, Henry Aaron, and Roberto Clemente.
Wow.
So talk about, keeping the starters in the game. Jeez.
You don't see that happen too often anymore.
Yeah.
Well, Bruce, in addition to writing about baseball, has written about a number of other topics, and we should mention that Bruce's father, Gordon Jenkins, was a world-renowned composer and also worked with Frank Sinatra and a number of other well-known musicians. And Bruce, you were surrounded by that as a young boy growing up, and you wrote a book about your dad after he passed. But you've written another book about music, and tell us a little bit about this book, because it just came out. It sounds interesting.
Yeah, you probably know Steve Ketman. He was a beat writer for the Chronicle on the A's and the Sharks.
Sure.
He's become a publisher down in Soquel, south of Santa Cruz. He runs a thing called Wellstone Publishing, which published Bruce Bochy's Book of Walks and Ken Korak's book on Bill King, and more recently Dusty Baker, a book called Kiss the Sky about how music changed Dusty's life. And Kevin got it in his head that because of my background, he wondered if I might be number 2 in the series of how music changed my life. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know, I guess so. And we started talking, and next thing you know, I started talking to Steve and writing things down about, in my household, we heard a lot of Sinatra and Tony Bennett and, Stravinsky and great opera and very great serious music. And I heard, once I heard Motown, and the title of the book is Shop Around, that was like a wake-up call for me when Shop Around came out with Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. I was 12 years old in 1960, and that, as it turned out, was the first big Motown hit. It was on the Tamla label, but it was Berry Gordy's Motown Empire. And I just sort of wrote about how that music did change my life and how it wasn't that popular in the household, although my mom was a little more agreeable to it. And it's a mini book. It's 131 pages. I also get into, I love the Stax Records music with Otis Redding, Sam Day, and Carla Thomas, and Steve Cropper, and Booker T, and all that. And I had a lot of fun sort of exploring what the Motown and Stax operations were all about, who the backup musicians were, and kind of went deep on that, and really had a blast doing it.
You want to hear something funny? Okay, when I was a kid, being in the car, my dad would always play the jazz music, right, from the 40s, 30s, and 40s, stuff like that. And then I'd try to turn the dial and put it on to rock and roll, and he'd say, "Turn that crap off," right? So then I'm in the car, and my son is a drummer, and he loves jazz. So I'll listen to rock and roll. He changes it to jazz. I say, "Turn that crap off."
That's funny.
I know that's why I think a lot of people can relate to this book, because we've all had that experience. The musical taste changed through the generations, and it's unlikely that everybody in the family is sitting around listening to the same thing.
One of the fascinating things about Bruce's book that he wrote about his father was a chapter that you wrote about. I think it was an afternoon you spent with Frank Sinatra, and it was rather late in Sinatra's life, I believe. And tell us that story, because that to me is one of the most fascinating things. First of all, how did you? Well, I guess you had an entree with him because your dad was, intimates with Frank, worked together. But what was that like, sitting down with Sinatra for almost a full afternoon?
That was unbelievable, and of course, it's entirely about my dad. I mean, Walter Cronkite was lucky to get a one-on-one interview with Sinatra, but that's how much he felt about my dad. And I started researching the book about my dad's life after he passed away in 1984, and I was really wanted to talk to Sinatra if it was going to be at all possible. And we had the key phone number to his A1 secretary, a woman named Dorothy, and I called Dorothy, and she said, "Oh, I talked to Frank. He'd love to do it. He's really busy," and that sort of went on for about 4 years.
Wow.
He's really busy. Of course he was. He's Frank Sinatra, for God's sake. But I wasn't a pest. I'd check in every 4 months or so, and then one day in '92, I just happened to be down in LA at the time. I got a call from Dorothy and said, "Can you be here at 4 o'clock in Beverly Hills?"
Wow.
And I sure was. I could have been in Egypt, and I would have been.
Did he show up and greet you at the door? Or did he have somebody open the door? And then
well, somebody else opened the door. But when I got in there, the foyer was just teeming with all these guys. Julie Rizzo was there. It looked like a bunch of mob guys, And I'm thinking, "Oh God, this isn't going to happen." All of a sudden, I looked out the window, and when I turned back around, everybody was gone. It's like Frank snapped his fingers, and everybody vanished into the air. He goes, "Let's go back in the back here." So we went back into a little room, and a very nice lady came and took our drink orders, and we're drinking screwdrivers and ordered my dad, and he gave me an hour, and we had the best hour interview as you can imagine any journalist could ever have. It was really rewarding, and it became a big part of my book.
So are you corroborating the fact that the rumors may be true about Frank and the mob?
Oh, nothing like that.
What was Frank like, though, when he talked about your dad? Did he get very sentimental? And because I know that they were very close.
He was in tears by the end at the thought that he was no longer there, because my dad and he worked on 8 albums together.
Wow.
Arranged, everybody in the orchestra, and conducted it in the studio. They were extremely close. Frank was extremely complimentary about my dad's command of an orchestra. He put it above all the arrangers that he worked with in that one regard. And I just learned a lot about how, you know, they would hang out together sometimes really, really quietly and tell each other's problems, and pretty revealing, because my dad never said anything about hanging out with Sinatra. That's just how private it was between the two of them.
You know, Frank had a very private life. I mean, he was a public figure, and sometimes some of the things he did probably got in the newspaper, and he probably wasn't too happy with it. But it seemed like he really kept a veil of secrecy around his life. So it's amazing that you get a chance to sit down with him. Was he pretty easygoing with you? Did he ask you, hey, Bruce, why are you getting into sports writing? Why don't you become get into music like your dad? Or did he like the fact that you got into sports writing?
Well, I mean, I long ago had realized that I wasn't going to be a musician of my dad's caliber, and not even close. I mean, my mom was a professional singer of the highest order and could sing anything in any key at any time, right on the spot. So, I mean, I was okay, but not in that family. I wanted to be a sports writer early on, and I knew right about the age of 12 that was going to be gone. So nobody ever knew me as a musician.
Well, of course, you mentioned this new book that you've written, and Motown, what an effect that it had. It's interesting, too, because I remember covering my first teams in the 1970s. I'm sure that you do remember this also. The African-American players, almost to a man, I remember going in the clubhouse, and they would have their little, I guess they had their little, music playing with the Smokey Robinson, the Miracles, or the main ingredient, or whoever, and it really was a part of the clubhouse atmosphere. Was that soul or the music that really became the Motown sound that really became sort of America's second music or important part of American culture.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's been the case all through time. I mean, you go into the clubhouse and you hear whatever's going on at whatever's contemporary. I mean, I go in there now, and I wish they'd turn the damn thing down.
Yeah, exactly. The hip hop or the rap stuff.
Just horrible.
Yeah.
Not melodic in the slightest.
Yeah. No.
Musicianship. And
I know. I figure if any 4-year-old can do that stuff, I'm not interested.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't get it. I hate to sound like an old crotchety guy, but in terms of musicianship and melodies, there's truly no comparison.
You ever talk to some of the athletes about music? I would think that some of the players would love to talk about that sort of thing because they probably get so tired of talking about baseball.
Yeah, occasionally. I'm really not getting into the clubhouse very much. As we were talking about, the access is limited. I hate going in there and just standing there, like with everybody else, like waiting for somebody to appear to talk about something. I want to have a specific question in mind that maybe nobody else is going to ask, or I'm just not going to be in there.
Yeah.
I'd rather just watch the game and write it the way I see it, and if it needs interpretation, then I'll certainly go down there. But I had much deeper relationships with players when I was on the beat throughout the 80s and into the 90s.
Who were some of the guys back in the day that you enjoyed dealing with, especially on those Oakland A's teams? Because I would think they're, between Ricky Henderson and Dave Stewart and Dennis Eckersley, they were some real colorful characters.
Yeah, Eckersley was the best. I mean, he's famous for, his stand-up interviews after a disaster, the Roberto Alomar or Kirk Gibson, but he was great on a day-to-day basis. He's extremely funny, really bright, sophisticated, and different, kind of had his own lingo, and Dwayne Murphy, I remember being a great guy. Jay Howell was one of the guys I actually became friends with, one of the very few players in any sport that I became sort of remotely friendly with. He was a fantastic guy. And I always enjoyed working with Billy Martin. It could get real fiery sometimes, but there was nobody quite as interesting as him.
Did you ever come almost to fisticuffs with anybody?
With any players?
Yeah, or
No. I've had players yell at me, but I mean, usually when stuff like that happens, it's over something that's really personal, or maybe when somebody yells at you, feel like yelling back, like, throwing in your own little obscenities there, like you want to fight. I'm totally not that way. And I generally don't write. I write about performance. If somebody doesn't perform and I write it, there's nothing really someone can say.
Yeah. But what's like here, we're not Jerry Springer. We always are nice to our guests. We want them back on.
What was your relationship?
I'm not into the confrontation.
There you go.
And getting personal life in there, asking players about their past, steroids,
sure.
Arrests or whatever. That's just not my personality.
And before we let you go, I got to ask you, what was your relationship like with Barry Bonds? How did you get along with him?
Zero from start to finish. When he came to the Giants, I very politely asked him 3 times for an interview, just a profile, kind of a puffy, hey, isn't this great kind of piece, and he turned me down all 3 times without being terribly nice about it. And so I just, and as I watched him over the years, the way he dealt with players, and fortunately I became a columnist where I didn't have to talk to him. So you'd never see me in those scrums. You'd never see me among those 25 people sitting around his locker for them to tell him like 3 words.
Gotcha. Bruce.
He's a good guy in a lot of ways, but when he was playing with the media, very as bad as I've ever seen.
Bruce Jenkins from the San Francisco Chronicle. Thanks again for joining us.
Thanks a lot, Bruce. Good talking to you, man.
Guys.
All right. Okay, real quickly. Who won the first home run derby in 1985? Don't touch that dial. Sports Econ 101. We'll be right back.
1985. Boy, that's a long. I'm trying to remember who did win the first one in 85. You know, it's interesting. Eckersley had the walk-off. He called it the walk-off. He was the one that started that. And that actually, we'll talk about that. It's kind of an interesting story coming out of the next one.
Yeah, it turns out that, okay, so I used to specialize with dentists,
Oh.
doing, the taxes, insurance, investments, stuff like that.
Sure.
Turns out that one of my clients was his best friend, Eckersley's best friend. In high
Oh,
school.
really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Eckersley's had some demons in his life. I mean, he had a major problem with alcoholism.
Yeah, I remember.
His marriage broke up because he was screwing around a lot when he was a player, but a lot of players do that, unfortunately. They get married too young and they're on the road and the temptations.
Sure.
But he's really gotten his, ever since he came to the A's, his life just, always was on the upswing. So that's nice to
He
hear.
played for Chicago and Boston.
Boston and Cleveland. He pitched no hitter
that's
for
right.
Cleveland.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah, started his career with the
That's right,
Tribe.
when he was more of a starter.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Well, what was sad was his best friend was Rick Manning. And Rick Manning and his wife and he were like, they'd hang around as a threesome. So one year Rick Manning was hurt and Dennis is on the road and Rick Manning is screwing around with his wife. And this is why they broke up. His second wife he broke up because he finally got together with the third one, and the third one, he always says, because he introduced me to her once, he goes, third time's the charm.
How long has he been married for?
He's been married now for about 27 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So this one's the keeper.
Good.
Yeah, that's good.
Excellent. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Again, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. Here was our second trivia question. Who won the first home run derby in 1985?
I didn't even know they went back that far. I covered the '84 All Star game, which was won by the National League at Candlestick 3-1, and I can't remember the next year who did win the first home run derby. So you're going to have to illuminate it.
Dave Parker.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember who won the World Series in '84.
'84 would have been. Let's see that.
'83
would have been the Tigers.
The
Tigers. Yeah, '83 was the actually.
Oh, the Orioles.
Yeah, the Orioles won.
That's right. '84 was the Tigers.
Tigers
Kirk Gibson. Yeah.
The Tigers beat the San Diego Padres, I believe, 4-1 or 4-0. And Kirk Gibson, I think he had 2 home runs in that last game.
Yeah.
I would have, I should have asked Bruce Jenkins about Kirk Gibson because there's an interesting guy. But you mentioned Dennis Eckersley, and Dennis Eckersley started a term which has become part of the lexicon of baseball language, the walk-off home run. And in Eckersley's parlance, it was actually known as the walk-off piece. And what it was when a pitcher, a reliever specifically, would give up a game-winning homer, he would walk off the mound towards the dugout in shame. And it was not supposed to be a positive thing, but it became a walk-off. You walk off the field and you're happy. And Dennis Eckersley used to, and I asked him about that. I said, what do you think? And he goes, I don't like it. It's a mockery of what I meant to say. But the original walk-off, of course, was Kirk Gibson beating him in the 1988 World Series, which, of course, turned that whole series in the Dodgers' favor.
Yeah, I can imagine. The way it's taken now, a walk-off home run, you hit that over the fence. You don't have to run around the bases.
You just kind of jog around the bases. Yeah. That's got to be tough though. You think about a relief pitcher, a great relief pitcher, and this happens to even the best ones. You have maybe that happen once or twice a year. Have it happen in a World Series or a playoff game. And for Eckersley, there was Bruce Jenkins sort of obliquely mentioned the other one with Sandy Alomar Jr. Actually, it was Roberto Alomar, I'm sorry, of the Toronto Blue Jays. And it was Game 4, close game. I think it was in the 8th inning in Oakland. I was covering this game, and he had a 3-run homer off of Eckersley in a close game. It was like, and that's another one. But you don't think of all the saves that guy had. You think of the failures. That's the problem with a reliever.
Well, especially with Kirk Gibson being hop along.
Oh yeah.
Gimpy.
Well, and that was the only at bat the entire postseason for him. I think he actually played in the NLCS, but in the World Series that was his only at bat, and the Dodgers still won without their star. That was
Oral Hershiser was a bulldog.
He was remarkable.
He was
absolutely remarkable.
So I brought up earlier in the first segment about reading this article about minor leaguers filing a lawsuit alleging. I'm sorry, I have to laugh about this. Alleging that their pay violates federal and state minimum wage laws.
Now, where specifically did this happen? Was it one particular group of minor leaguers in one particular league?
That's a good question.
Because I'm just wondering, if it gets to the AAA level, those guys get paid fairly well. Double A, single A, not so well. We have a team here in San Rafael where this broadcast emanates from, minor league independent team, and they're paid, I think, about $1,000 a month. For 3 months, they get $3,000. I think that's it. So they don't, they just happen to be doing it. But I'm wondering, because minor leaguers compared to the big leaguers are paid a pittance, but unless they're a top draft pick that is going to be fast tracked to the big club. And you don't see that very often.
But realistically, though, again, the travel time, wouldn't they supposed to get paid for that?
Right.
Extra batting practice. I mean,
interesting.
It's sort of like the antitrust laws where, there's certain rules that you go, well, maybe they just shouldn't apply to sports, baseball specifically.
Baseball, I tell you, baseball players maybe don't have it quite as good as basketball because the NBA just signed this new contract with the television networks, which gave them billions of dollars for the future. And this is why they've been able to spend, like drunken sailors on. I mean, look at the guys that are making the superstars in 2 or 3 years are going to be making 30, 40 million a year. The average players will be making 14 or 15 million. A guy like Zaza Pachulia, now he's just a backup. He's a good player. He signed a 1-year deal for 2.9. He could have stayed in Dallas for 3 times that amount, but he wanted a chance to win a title. But think about it. Zaza Pachulia is a decent, player, but he's going to make 7, 8, 9, 10 million if he stays in Dallas. So,
it's interesting. That way, it's kind of insulting to Dallas to say, I'm going to leave you because I want to go with a contender. We're not a contender.
Well, I think he's looking at they picked up Kevin Durant, and they've got Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Andre Iguodala and Draymond Green. And speaking of Draymond Green, not to get off on a tangent about this, but this whole thing about him slapping this guy that was insulting him. Now we've read about how this whole thing happened. I guess the two men, Green and this, I think he was a freshman or a sophomore football player, a wide receiver from Michigan State, which is, of course, Draymond Green's alma mater. They were in a bar, and Green sort of bumped against him, and the guy said, this is according to the guy, he said, hey, watch out. And Green said, don't you know who I am? And so they ran into each other later that night at this all-night place where you get a bite to eat, that doesn't serve any alcohol. You get your breakfast kind of thing. Yeah. And they had some words, and they went outside, and the next thing you know, and unfortunately, Green is just not thinking. He's not a dumb guy, but he's just not thinking. And he had, unfortunately, a .10 blood alcohol level. He slaps this guy in the face with the back of his hand, and a loud crack, was heard. And there's a cop standing like 15 feet away. I mean, that's just
if you're gonna do it, you might as well have witnesses.
Yeah, I mean, but he did it right in front of the cop. So they arrested him, they handcuffed him. I mean, talk about humiliation. For slapping somebody, you get arrested, handcuffed, and you have to pay a fine and go to court. I mean, that's absurd.
But also, I don't like these, don't you know who I am?
Well, I know. And Green may, unfortunately...
You're just a human being.
Yeah, he may
you're
just...
a basketball player, but you're just a human being.
Yeah, we're hearing it, again, I'm not condoning what Draymond Green did. We're only hearing it from the other guy's viewpoint. It's interesting, though, too, that this guy was asked by a reporter, are you going to file charges? Are you going to go to court and file a lawsuit? Yes, I am. I'm just thinking to myself,
for what? I mean,
for damages. He slapped me in the face. He humiliated me,
and that's got to be worth $100 million. Right?
Well, and I think he'll probably settle out of court. He'll probably get a 10 grand or something. Draymond will
I
give
mean,
him
yeah, I mean, what is a hand across the face worth?
Well, if you knock the guy's eye out or
Oh, yeah,
injure
of course.
himself, but he slapped him in the face for crying out loud. I mean, I'm not condoning that. Don't get me wrong.
We're not saying that.
So,
And the thing is, if it's a man versus woman, it's all over.
Yeah, no, yeah. Well, what was it? Ray Rice, was that the guy that beat up his wife? And they initially in the elevator, and then they had the shot. They had two cameras, one inside the elevator that showed him beating her up, and one outside the elevator where he was dragging her out of the elevator.
Yeah, that's a little different.
A little different.
Just
a
a slap
little different.
across the face.
Yeah.
Especially if she got knocked out. Is that right?
She was knocked out cold. And the amazing thing was, I'm not sure about this, but I think they got back together. Talk about a dysfunctional relationship. Jeez. Oh, yeah, come on. I'll love to have you slap me around again.
He promises to only do it once a year. No more than once a year.
Maybe. Speaking of, and I don't want to get off on a tangent on negativity here, but did you read this thing recently about how Joe Paterno, I guess knew years in advance that what Jerry Sandusky, his good buddy and assistant coach, was doing, and he did nothing about it. And a young boy who was one of the players came to him, and he goes, I don't have time for this. I'm preparing for the season.
See, what I don't understand is
what is going on there?
I mean, again, we're being a fly on the wall and say, does Paterno take Sandusky aside and say, hey, listen, I'm getting these reports from these people. What are you doing?
Maybe he did do that, and maybe Sandusky is so sick that he just couldn't help himself. You know, and in that case, if that was the case, why didn't Sandusky just quietly suspend him for personal health? Paterno, Sandusky, suspended. But that it's sad because I think Paterno did feel guilty about it later because
I think that's what killed him.
I think it's what killed him, and it's sad. His legacy is forever tarnished. You know, I mean, they're not even going to honor him at Penn State anymore, and they shouldn't.
No, they shouldn't.
They shouldn't. I mean, to turn a blind eye to that kind of thing, that's
for how many years and how many victims? And then
dozens.
So you have you obviously have the emotional cost on those poor boys, and then you had almost $100 million spent on settlements and lawyer fees and blah 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 from the insurance company. I mean, what do you think's going to happen? That you can just sweep everything under the rug?
Well, that to me. That's what amazes me even more is the fact that the media didn't get wind of this until towards the end. You know, I mean, the media either covered it up or didn't know about it. How could you not know about it? I mean, the news must have been, maybe they kept the lid on it so tightly.
Well, or maybe what ended up happening, and again, that's just surmising.
Right.
A player, basically, he gets nowhere with Paterno.
Right.
Maybe buries it for a little while. Then he brings it to light, and then they hush-hush. Pay him X amount,
Sure, I think
$2 million, you're going to keep your mouth shut.
I think that's probably it. I think a lot of players, too, that this happened to were probably so shamed they didn't want to go public with it. Maybe after getting out of the sport, when they're in their 20s and 30s, they're thinking about it, and, maybe that's when it came out. I don't remember the genesis of when the news, came out initially, but I just know that it was a long time between, allegedly, this guy was doing it back in the late 90s.
Yeah.
And
I've never been in that situation, but I'm thinking, if you're a 14-year-old boy or 15-year-old boy, and now the thing is that those boys, that would have been like a camp then.
Yeah, and apparently he did it at the camp. He did it to some of the players that were, younger players, and he'd always pick out these guys that were from broken homes or had some emotional problems because he knew they were more vulnerable.
Exactly.
That to me, that's predator, definitely. Yeah. It's just sad. I mean, and it's amazing to me that. I hate to say this, but it's amazing to me we don't hear more of this kind of stuff. Maybe there is a lot of this stuff going on because you think about all the coaches and all the players that are out there. There's got to be a couple out there, unfortunately, that have these kind of tendencies.
And then at some point, Penn State will get its reputation back.
Some point.
But can you imagine right after that how easy would it have been to recruit? Hi, how would you like to play for Penn State? Penn State. Go, yeah, that's good. I mean, I'd be embarrassed to be playing for Penn State.
What amazes me is that, I guess at their stage of life, what have they got? What alternative do they have? But the wives of Paterno and Sandusky stuck with them, and they claimed that they knew nothing about it and that it was wrong.
Maybe Paterno's wife.
Maybe Paterno's. How could Sandusky's wife not know about what was going on?
No, it's like when there was a big embezzlement and the wives are making gazillions of dollars from a guy who drives a truck. Yeah. And suddenly, I had no idea where all these mink coats were coming from.
Well, I mean, she's almost as guilty as he is for not being. Anyway, I didn't want to get off on a tangent on that, but it just struck me as odd and really sad that it took all that time. And I guess that's what happens when you're dealing with something that's so heinous and so shameful. Anyway.
No, so Paterno, basically, it's like he dies within, what, a year?
I think it was within a year or two, yeah.
Within a year.
Yeah.
After it comes to light. So
Yeah.
can you imagine living all those years and not really, like, it affecting you?
Well, maybe it did affect him, and maybe that's, the cumulative effect killed him too. I mean, if you had to live with that, Paterno seemed like a decent guy.
Sure
I mean,
yeah.
I even interviewed him a couple of times over the years at events, and he seemed like a really straightforward, decent guy. Maybe, he was so loyal to his friend that he had to look past this, and maybe he thought, well, maybe it happened once or twice, but I know Jerry, he's a good guy. And maybe he found out that when it did happen, he was so far down the road that he thought, oh gosh, I can't say that I knew about this all along, so I'm going to deny the whole thing.
Yeah, but it's better just to let him go, like you said. Just
let him go, or just say, hey, look, he's taking a leave of absence. Hey, an unlimited amount of time.
Exactly. All right, we're going to get to our last trivia question here. In 20 seasons from 1963 to 1982, the National League won every All Star game except for one. Which year did the American League? So funny because it flipped. Right now, the American League's been winning.
It's been dominating.
15 years.
Yeah.
And this one was, to me, it was kind of a memorable All-Star game for a specific reason.
Okay.
We'll see if you can just get it from that, all right?
Sounds good.
So again, here's our question. In 20 seasons from 1963 to 1982, can you imagine betting every year going, come on, I know the American League's going to win. The National League won every year except for one. All right? Now, the first email with the correct answer is going to win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Email Edward at sportsecon101.com. The answer to that question, don't touch that dial. SportsEcon101. We'll come back with that answer and some closing comments.
Sounds good. I took my daughter and her best friend out to Tamales Beach today, and it's funny, to Heart's Desire Beach.
Oh yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and they didn't want to stay there. They wanted there's this little beach. It's about a mile walk over this hill, which has these teepees, and it's kind of an historical site. They wanted to hang out there, so I said, okay, we'll go over there. And all they did was like walk around and look in the bay for little crabs. That's all they did. So funny when kids are. Yeah, it's a great age. 11 years old. And then on the way back, they're talking about boys, of course.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Well, they're talking about it, but he's a jerk, or he's a dick, or never anything nice. I said, you guys have anything nice to say about boys? You're kind of offending
Not yet.
here, Come on.
Don't worry, next year.
Yeah, next year. Well,
he got tall.
Yeah. It's that awkward age. The tweeners, that's what they call it, yeah.
Here we go. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. Third and final trivia question. In 20 seasons from 1963 to 1982, the National League won every All-Star game except for one. Which one?
Boy, I used to watch those games regularly. As a matter of fact, I watched them with a lot more interest in the old days because the stars would play longer, but I don't remember.
It was 1971,
Uh-huh.
and they won 6-4 at Tiger Stadium. And the reason I remember that is going to be MVP of the game was Frank Robinson, but Reggie Jackson hit a towering home run. If he didn't hit it out of Tiger Stadium, he hit it like in the third, at least the third down.
Now I remember that. Yes, I do remember that. That Reggie hit some amazing home runs, but that was one that because it was a nationally televised game with the All Star game going on. Yeah, that was a big one. Reggie was an interesting guy. I got to know him a little bit just as a reporter, and I'll never forget his last day with the Oakland A's, which was his last home game with the Oakland A's. He had a few more before that. He got a game-winning hit, and I asked him. I said, "Oh, that's kind of a nice way to go out." He goes, "Huh?" And I said, "Well, your last big hit in front of the home fans." He goes, "You know something I know? I don't know." And I said, "Well, aren't you retiring?" He goes, "I'm not making any official announcement to you. You're a nice fellow, but I have a reason, a purpose for that. But when I do decide to make an announcement, you'll be the first MF I call."
And were you?
No.
Well,
I had to laugh because that was Reggie. That was classic Reggie.
Now, did you just happen to guess that or had he kind of?
No, he had hit it, and everybody, it was common knowledge, and he was going to retire, but I think he was just having some fun. Reggie always liked to embarrass people, but not in a mean-spirited way, but he'd kind of look at you, he'd look right through you, and, by this time, by this time I'm in my mid-30s, and I'm past the point of being embarrassed, but I thought it was pretty funny. I still have that tape somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's he doing nowadays?
I have no idea. You know, I see him once in a while at games. He's close to 70 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
I bet he could still hit.
Oh, I bet you
Okay,
could.
okay, here's our thoughts for the day. The wise does at once what the fool does at last.
Mm.
And what you get by achieving your goals is not as important as what you become by achieving your goals.
Who
I like
said that?
I don't know. I just said it now.
Oh, you did.
Tune in next week to Sports Econ 101. We're going to be discussing sports topics from a business perspective and giving away more free vacations.
Like those free vacations.
More questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm your host, Edward Brown. We'll see you next week.
Good night, America.
So long.
All right.
Good.
Good deal. All right, my friend. I gotta go get my monthly or my bi-yearly cleaning at the dentist.
Oh yeah, which dentist?
Noah Tailinger.